Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce General Glenn Van Herk, the commander of NORAD and U.S. Northcom.
Well, what a beautiful day, and how about that flyby right on time? That's perfect. Welcome to the NORAD and United States Northern Command 9/11 Commemoration ceremony. Before I go any further, I do want to thank a few people. I think we need to recognize our Gold Star families, certainly who've given so much for being here. The distinguished guests, I'm not going to go through all of them. Many of them are here in the front row, but elsewhere, both military and civilians who partner with us to accomplish what we do each and every day. The members of NORAD and United States Northern Command and their families that are here, as well as I want to thank the United States Air Force Academy band over here and that wonderful national anthem. Thank you so much. General Shelton, the Colorado 30 Group, thanks for your continued support. They do so much, not only for NORAD and Northcom, Peter Schriever, Garrison, but the military community here in Colorado Springs. Thank you so much for what you do. I appreciate it. All of this does require a little bit of planning, believe it or not, and I need to thank some folks who made that happen. Major General Michelle Rose and her team who put this together. Major General Rose is the J4, our Director of Logistics and Engineering. She's sitting right back there. Thank you, Michelle, and your team for putting it together. And of course, our protocol team, Miss Vicki Smith and her excellent staff. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I think it's important that we start today remembering those we lost in Afghanistan, in Kabul recently. Our thoughts and prayers go out to those family members and the friends of the 13 American service members, men and women, who lost their lives and those that were injured on the 26th of August, as well as those who've made the ultimate sacrifice in the 2 decades past this date and around the globe, sacrificing for our freedoms each and every day. 20 years ago today, it was a beautiful day just like this on the East Coast and where I was, our homeland, our nation was attacked. On that clear Tuesday morning of September 11th, 2001, the United States experienced a tragedy that fundamentally changed the world and how we live our lives today. That day forever changed the lives of thousands who lost their loved ones in the attack, as well as the lives of many service members and their families who over the last 20 years have continued to serve and defend our freedom and our way of life. It changed society, and as we enacted new laws and policy to counter terrorism across the globe, as well as it shifted the focus of our military, setting in motion the events that led to 2 decades of fighting terror, and also the establishment of United States Northern Command. Today at this ceremony, just as the world paused so many years ago, we pause and reflect on the importance of this date, 9/11, and honor those that we lost in the world's deadliest terrorist attack. Many of you remember exactly where you were on that day. As the first flight, American Airlines Flight 11, hurtled into the first tower, some of you, both U.S. and Canadian, were scrambled into your fighter jets to intercept airliners that could be utilized as weapons, possibly moments away from making the toughest decision you can ever make. That's to shoot down a civilian airliner with our nation's citizens, our allies and partners potentially on board, that has been turned into a weapon. You know, I remember that day vividly. I was the director of operations at the 325th Bomb Squadron, Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri. The wing was in the middle of Exercise Global Thunder. Many of you have done a few Global Thunders. It's a nuclear readiness exercise and generation. It was also our operational readiness inspection. We had accomplished our mission, we had generated our aircraft, and we were preparing to scramble to the aircraft as part of the exercise, essentially the finale. I was the top 3, the supervisor, if you will, for the wing that morning, overseeing operations for the entire wing, when my staff notified me of the first airplane hitting the North Tower. At first, I thought, how can such an accident happen? Shortly after that, the klaxon went off, and our crews responded to their aircraft. A flight line full of B-2 bombers, ready to go to war if needed. Shortly after, the second plane hit the South Tower, the second tower. It was at this point I realized that our lives had changed forever. This was no accident. This was an attack on our homeland. You know, many thoughts went through my mind in the moments that followed. The first one was that our daughter, Marilyn and I's daughter, Molly Jean, was a second grader on the Whiteman Air Force Base. I thought I should go get her for her safety. Should go home, take her home. But I quickly realized that's not what I was charged to do, and that's not what I raised my right hand for. I was responsible for the men and women of the wing, the aircraft on the flight line, the weapons that they had on board, for I knew that it was just a matter of days or weeks that we would utilize our nation's assets, our most important resources, our people, to respond to the attacks on our homeland. In the aftermath, let me back up just a moment. A few days later, what I found myself doing, it was on October the 5th. I found myself again as top 3, supervisor of what was going on. But this time it was for a different mission. It was no exercise, and it wasn't a test of our readiness ability. In a way, it was. I was launching combat sorties from Missouri at Whiteman Air Force Base, our nation's first response to the attacks on our homeland. Those sorties were the longest sorties in our nation's history, in combat history. More than 44 hours as we responded from Missouri, flew across the Pacific Ocean, down around south into the Indian Ocean, through Pakistan into Afghanistan, delivered weapons back out south, down into Diego Garcia. The airplanes were never shut off. New crews were put on them, and they were flown home some 70 hours later. In the aftermath of the attacks, much of the world put aside our differences to proclaim we are all Americans. On this 20th anniversary, once again, we are all Americans. We all know the history. The importance of the day deserves retelling. At approximately 8:45 Eastern Daylight Time on September 11th, American Airlines Flight 11 was flown as a weapon into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. 18 minutes later, United Airlines Flight 175 hit the South Tower. A total of 2,753 were killed in the attacks in New York, most in the towers. What's impressive, though, many ran towards the danger to save our fellow citizens, our allies and partners, including firemen, paramedics, policemen, many who died as they attempted to combat the damage in and around the towers and save those who were trapped inside. In Washington, D.C., 189 passengers and DoD personnel also lost their lives when American Airlines Flight 77 was flown into the west side of the Pentagon. The final plane, United Airlines Flight 93, which the hijackers planned to crash into our nation's capital, target another piece of our history, was instead intentionally forced down by its passengers, heroes that we should reward today. In rural Pennsylvania, all perished, 40 passengers on board that day. If not for the bravery of the men and women who had the courage to retake that airplane, many more would have lost their lives. They saved them. And you remember the terminology of "let's roll," the last words you heard out of Flight 93. Today, to my right and over my shoulder, we see the 9/11 Memorial, and out in the parking lot we have vehicles that represent many who gave their lives that day in a fire truck, police car, ambulance, a Stryker, that represent the 343 firefighters and paramedics, 71 law enforcement officers, and 55 military personnel we lost in those attacks 20 years ago today. In many ways, what the men and women of United Airlines Flight 93 did reflects the mission that we have here today at NORAD and United States Northern Command. We deter potential adversaries who want to hold our homelands at risk. We deny our competitors the ability to shape our actions, and we stand ready. We have the watch each and every day to defeat any and every threat to our homeland, whether that be a terrorist aircraft, a state actor with a cruise missile or a ballistic missile, or a pandemic or natural disaster. We, as the members of NORAD and United States Northern Command, carry the responsibility of the oaths which we each took, committing to protect our respective nations, against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and we carry with us the legacy of all who donned the cloth of our nations before us. On 9/11, we lost military, civilians, firefighters, law enforcement officers, along with 90 allied foreign personnel in this heinous attack on our homeland. 2,977 in total. More than anything, this illustrates that we're in a fight to defend the homelands together. Certainly through NORAD and our binational command, now more than 63 years in existence, we know the inseparable link between Canada, the United States, but it also illustrates the inseparable link and the relationships and the importance of our international allies and partners, and that we must achieve globally integrated deterrence to ensure our safety at home. What happened on 9/11 continues to shape the world that we live in. Over the past month, your United States Northcom team has been instrumental in helping to resettle more than 50,000, so far to date, Afghan personnel who aided the United States, our allies and partners. They saved the lives of many over the last 2 decades in our fight against Al-Qaeda and its terrorist offshoots. Although we can now mark the end of one of the longest wars in our nation's modern history, this end does not relinquish our duty to defend our homelands and the globe from terrorism. 9/11 and the recent ISIS-K attack in Kabul remind us that violent extremist organizations still desire to disrupt our way of life, and that other adversaries wish us the same. And the scope of threats continue to expand each and every day. We remain ready to confront every challenge that threatens our homelands. In partnership with United States Spacecom, we're making strides in advancing all-domain awareness to contribute to our overall homeland defense design. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn the mic over to our next speaker, the Commander of United States Space Command, General James Dickinson. I had the pleasure last summer of testifying with General Dickinson. It was in July of last year. We went through confirmation together. We had the honor of accepting the guidon for each of our combatant commands on the very same day, and we continue to work together to defend our homeland, to defend the globe from the heinous acts not only of terrorists, but other nations that wish to do us harm. General Dickinson, he hails from Estes Park, Colorado. He's a Coloradan by trade. He graduated from Colorado State University. He's commanded at all levels in the United States Army and the Joint Force, including Chief of Staff at United States Strategic Command, Commander of United States Army Space and Missile Defense Command. He's also the Senior Air Defense Artillery Officer in the United States Army. And Jim, it's a pleasure for you and Angie and Marilyn and I to be here together and to share this podium with you on this day where we commemorate the events of 20 years ago today. I yield to you.
Well, good morning. Glenn, thanks for that kind introduction, and that we were battle buddies that day in front of the SASC, and so you know, you're tried and true, and consider you a dear friend along with Marilyn, and an honor to be invited here to be here with you today. Ladies and gentlemen, the first thing I'd like to do is to acknowledge that among us today are the local Gold Star family members whose loved ones paid the ultimate sacrifice to our great nation. Really, to our Gold Star family members, thank you for being here today, and thank you for representing your loved ones and the thousands of men and women who have also given their lives in our nation's fight against terrorism. We understand that your own sacrifices continue, and with you, we will never forget those who you lost, nor their sacrifices. And Glenn, I think it's very fitting today that we are flying the Gold Star flag over here to my right and to your left, and I think that is a fitting tribute to our Gold Star families alongside our great flag of the United States of America and Canada. So if you'll join me, let us recognize the great Gold Star families. Glenn, we are honored that you invited Angie and I to be here today to help commemorate this solemn anniversary. I am honored to share this morning in the stage with General Glenn Van Herk and General Ed Eberhard. General Eberhard was the last commander of the first United States Space Command and the first commander of the United States Northern Command. Having commanded 2 combatant commands gives him a unique leadership perspective on what's needed to protect and defend the United States and our allies. And he is in a unique position to understand why we established a new United States Space Command. So for 2 decades after 9/11, I'm honored to represent those warfighters of our nation's newest and 11th Combatant Command, established so we can get ahead of a new threat to the American and Allied way of life. In 2002, the strategic environment and our fight against terrorism required a new combatant command, solely focused on homeland security. Today, 20 years later, competitors threaten our ability to access the benefits of space that the strategic environment demanded we establish a combatant command to protect and defend the space domain. So 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, we did just that. And just as we built U.S. Northern Command to address new threats, so too we are building U.S. Space Command to meet new national security imperatives. And we're doing it with the framework that General Eberhard used during his tenure as Commander of United States Space Command. And with our partners, U.S. Northern Command and NORAD, led by General Van Herk and his outstanding teammates in the defense of the United States and our allies. With that joint, combined, and partnered approach to our mission, we will succeed in our march at U.S. Space Command to full operational capability. Our task is not unlike the previous U.S. Space Command who faced it in the mid-80s. And it's not unlike what Northern Command faced in the immediate aftermath of 9/11. How best do we posture the Department of Defense to protect and defend the United States and our allies in a rapidly changing strategic environment? Ladies and gentlemen, we are well postured to defend aggression and defend the nation, our allies, and U.S. interests against hostile acts in space. Our objective is and always will be to deter a conflict. We really have no choice, since every instrument of our U.S. and allied national powers are enabled by a safe, secure, stable access to the space domain. However, should deterrence fail, the United States Space Command stands ready to protect and defend U.S. and allied interests, to enable the American and allied way of life and the allied and American way of war. Our vision at U.S. Space Command is to ensure there is never a day without space. But the men and women of the United States Space Command work on this vision each day in a larger context and for a larger purpose. On this 20th anniversary of 11 September 2001, that larger purpose binds all American and Allied warriors in arms as it has since the day of that attack. That larger purpose is to deter such an attack in the future. That larger purpose allows us to say with credibility, never again. Angie and I are incredibly honored to be with all of you today, and our wish is that God will continue to bless all of you here today and to continue to bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I really appreciate that. Well, now I get the honor of introducing our keynote speaker. General Dickinson highlighted. United States Northern Command was born from 9/11. For the first time since the early days of the Republic, a single military commander was charged with protecting the United States, and still is to this day. And that bond between NORAD and United States Northern Command to defend North America and our homeland is incredibly strong. The commander of NORAD on 9/11 was General Eberhard. He became that single military leader. Today we are honored to have him as our keynote speaker. General Eberhard is a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and commanded at all levels, from flight, squadron, wing, numbered Air Force, Major Command, Sub-Unified Command, Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force, 2 Unified Commands, and 1 Binational Command. I bet there's nobody else that can have the same claim as that record. He's an avid aviator with more than 5,000 hours, primarily in fighter aircraft, also trainer aircraft, including 300 combat missions as a forward air controller in Vietnam. He's a decorated war hero and veteran who served our nation for active duty for 36 years and continues to serve this community and our great country. And it is my honor to welcome General Ed Eberhard to the podium.
Well, what an honor it is to be here today as we pay tribute to 9/11. And I think Glenn has accurately talked about what unfolded on 9/11. I appreciated all his remarks, but one thing really surprised me. He said it was a pleasure to testify. A pleasure to testify. I'm sure I'm taking that out of context, but I don't remember it being a pleasure to testify.
It was a pleasure to be with my friends.
I say, okay. So I'm a country western fan, although I like other music. And I do think that Alan Jackson, where were you when the world stopped spinning? Where were you on that September morning? And I think we all ask ourselves that, and it's not hard for us to remember. It's our day that lived in infamy, just like for our parents and grandparents, it was Pearl Harbor in 1941. It was a Chamber of Commerce day on the East Coast, Eastern Seaboard, and here in Colorado. I just returned from my morning run and got a hotline call from the mountain that FAA had requested that we launch fighters to join on a suspected hijacked airplane. It's not that I took that lightly, but it really didn't concern me because I thought probably there was something wrong, and it wasn't a hijacking. And they wanted to make sure it was okay that they launched those airplanes, which they already had because that's what they're paid to do. But that I agreed. So then, shortly thereafter, I saw on the TV the impact of the first airliner, American Airlines Flight 11. And the news reports was a light airplane hit the North Tower in a World Trade Center. Anybody who looked at that eruption, looked at that crash, knew that it wasn't a light airplane. Secondly, it was very important to me that it couldn't have been a mistake, because in pilot language, we were VMC, we were VFR, we were visual. We weren't on our instruments, and no pilot would fly right in to the World Trade Center. So I picked up the phone, called the mountain. Is that the suspected hijacked airplane? We don't know yet, sir. Why didn't we know? Because we did not have radar coverage inside the United States. We relied on FAA for that, and all of our radar were faced outbound to look for violations of our sovereign airspace. So that was NORAD's orientation that day, was that an occasional Russian bomber would come up and play with us, if you will, and then supporting the Drug Enforcement Agency, illicit drugs from South and Central America. So then, shortly thereafter, United Airlines 175 hit the South Tower. And there was no doubt in my mind that we were under attack. I called the Pentagon and expressed that and was told never to say that again. But I'm saying it again. We were undoubtedly under attack. So the question was, how do we get airplanes airborne? How do we establish air sovereignty? And then, quite frankly, what do we do if we join on a hijacked airplane? Again, our exercises were, we would go up, we have a memorandum of understanding with the FAA, we'd join on the wing and be their eyes in the sky and tell FAA what they were doing. A failure of imagination is probably what, God rest his soul, Don Rumsfeld would say. Or he'd also say, just because it's improbable doesn't mean it's impossible. And the impossible happened that day. So then the question was, how many more hijacked airplanes are out there? And how do we get them all on the ground? New York Center stopped accepting airplanes into their airspace, which obviously sent us a strong signal. And then one or two of the airlines did a ground halt, which we go, what a great idea. We should have thought of that about 15 minutes ago. So we grounded all the airplanes. Still had lots of airplanes airborne. Obviously, then you have American Airlines Flight 77. Came right down by the Pentagon. I'm convinced it was looking for the Capitol or the White House, and its alternate target was the Pentagon. For those poor souls in the Pentagon. And then, as Glenn talked about, the bravery. Can you imagine the bravery? Can you put yourself in that airplane and be part of the decision that says, we're going to take this airplane down? We're not going to let it be a kamikaze act. It's not going to be a weapon. We are going to give our lives to save the lives of others. Can you imagine? We're trained to do that in the military. Many of us have come close to doing that on the battlefields, whether they're on the ground or the air or the sea. But to do that in an airliner is beyond comprehension for me. So finally, we got all the airplanes down. And I can tell you that at that, it was 77 minutes of chaos, of confusion, until that last crash. And then for the Pentagon in New York City, the confusion and the chaos was just beginning, So, Eberhardt Finley building, Lieutenant General Rick Finley had to watch that morning, was running a NORAD mission, cool under fire, did everything exactly as he should have done. And I salute him each and every day, except when he reminds me that if you have a hyphenated name, the last name is most important. I take a little issue with that. But anyway, so what happened after we got everybody down? Immediately we're thinking, how do we return to air travel? What do we have to do to return to air travel? How do we have to make it safe, acceptable? And you know all the things we've done, whether it's scanning, whether it's no-fly list, what you can put on the airplane, what you can't take on the airplane. For a while, you couldn't get out of your seat the first 30 minutes, and you had to be in your seat the last 30 minutes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing I think really puts it in perspective, and that is you have kids and grandkids that when you tell them that you used to go to the gate to see off a loved one, or you used to go to the gate to greet a loved one, they go, how's that possible? How is that possible? Unbelievable. So now what do we do afterwards? Another country song? Courtesy of the red, white, and blue. The angry American. We've got to find those perpetrators. We've got to make them pay, and we've got to make sure this does not happen again. So we talk about hardening our airports, hardening air travel, protection for our critical infrastructure. But there were some strategic things that Glenn referenced that are very important, and a lot of people don't realize they came out as a result of 9/11. We revitalized the Air Marshal program. It was started by Kennedy back in 1961, but it was pretty dormant. And we can all remember those first months and years where you could pick out the Air Marshal on the flight. Back in 1955, there was a big debate in Congress on terms of the intelligence apparatus organization. We decided that after the results of 9/11, which was a failure of intelligence, some intelligence agencies knew that there were suspected terrorists taking flight lessons. Don't you think that would have been of interest to the Department of Defense and to the commander of NORAD? So a failure of intelligence. So a DNI, a Director of National Intelligence, was set up. And then finally, I think a lot of people don't realize, but the Department of Homeland Security, with Tom Ridge at its head, initially as the advisor to the President for Homeland Security, and then the Secretary of Homeland Security. And again, there wasn't one belly button, there wasn't one command that the President and the Secretary could go to for the defense and security of the homeland of North America. So we stood up Northcom. A lot of things we got right. One of them was it was established here in Colorado Springs, Mayor. That's one of the things we got right. But the thing we got wrong is we paid for it with U.S. Space Command. Wasn't exactly my decision, but I hate to admit I didn't fight it, and I should have fought it, because that was a mistake. So today you have a Northcom that's vital. You have a restructured NORAD that's key to our success, the safety and security of our nation. One thing I failed to say that I have to say, and I'm embarrassed that I say it, but I grew up with respect for the first responders. On 9/11, that respect became admiration, admiration. And there was no doubt in my mind that they were brothers and sisters in arms, helping protect this great nation and its citizens. So God bless you, God bless you. So, one more country Western song. Have you forgotten? Have you forgotten that September morning? We must never, ever, ever forget. We must not forget those who lost their lives that day and who've lost their lives over these 2 decades of fighting terrorism. We must honor them, and the way we honor them is not forget. Don't let our guard down. We're impatient by nature. That's the way we do things. We get over things. Our staunch enemies in World War I and World War II are our best allies today. But you never ally with terrorism and with terrorists. We owe the Gold Star families. We all owe all those who've lost their lives on the battlefields around this nation, around this world, fighting terrorism, to not forget. Do not forget. Many in the audience were with us in those early days after 9/11 in both Northcom and NORAD. And we asked ourselves 3 questions virtually every day. One is, why haven't we been attacked again? Why haven't we been attacked again? I don't know the answer for sure, but I think it's because we took the fight to the enemy. The best defense is a good offense, and didn't provide the enemy sanctuary. The second question was, how do we win? How do we win this war on terrorism? I don't know the answer to that, but I know how we don't win. We don't win by capturing and killing terrorists. It's well beyond that. It's well beyond that. We have to use all the elements of national power to win this war. And I would offer it may not be winnable. We just have to keep them at bay over the years. And then even a tougher question is, how do we know when we've won? Many people would say it's been 20 years since a terrorist attack on our soil, or like the one of 9/11, so we've won. Wrong, wrong. Remember patience. Osama bin Laden first introduced the idea of an attack on our homeland, like we saw in 9/11, to his inner circle in 1986. 1986. Can you imagine us planning something for 15 years? We wouldn't do that. We wouldn't do that. They have patience. They're going to come after us again. And we have to keep our guard up. Glenn and Jim, thank you so much for your leadership of 2 vital commands, 2 commands that mean a lot to me. I watch closely, probably too closely, as you command these. And thank you again for inviting me to participate today. And again, don't forget, don't forget. And the final country song is God Bless the USA.
Thank you, General Eberhard. At this time, General Van Herk will present a memento to General Eberhard in appreciation for his legacy of support to our commands. This portrait, created by one of our talented staff members, Mr. Jay Banzel, represents the NORAD and U.S. Northcom headquarters, named after General Eberhard and Lieutenant General Findlay.
Thank you so much. General Eberhard, I can't say how much we appreciate, first, your service, the service where you led our nation through some very tough times. You reflect back on it. Your words of wisdom, we take those to heart. We must never forget those words, and we must never forget. This is a handcrafted picture, if you will, of the Eberhardt Findlay building with a dedication on the back. It was done by Mr. Jay Bonsall from our Public Affairs Director. He created this, and it's in commemoration of the 20th anniversary, with much gratitude from the men and women of NORAD and United States Northern Command, 11 September 2021.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now commence with the wreath-laying ceremony. These wreaths are in remembrance of all who perished on September 11th, 2001, and for those in uniform who gave their lives in the war on terrorism. Our September 11th memorial is a steel beam recovered from the remnants of the World Trade Center and is pointed towards New York, paying respect to the lives lost there. The Pentagon-shaped planter honors our fallen comrades and friends at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. The Pennsylvania soil in the planter pays tribute to the brave passengers of Flight 93. The wreaths placed today commemorate the sacrifices made that day and the courage and dedication of those who defend our homelands here at home and across the globe. The United States Northern Command was created following the September 11th attacks. We remain steadfast in our commitment to deter, defend, and protect the United States and its interests. We have the watch. While Loy Osborne plays Amazing Grace on the bagpipes, the first wreath is presented on behalf of the United States military by General Van Herk, General Eberhardt, and Sergeant Major Porterfield. The second wreath is presented on behalf of the Canadian military by Lieutenant General Alain Peltier, the Deputy Commander of NORAD, and Canadian Element Chief Warrant Officer James McCarran. The third wreath is presented on behalf of the civil servants of Colorado by the Mayor of Colorado Springs, John Suthers, and Brigadier General Scott Sherman, Director of Joint Staff, Colorado National Guard. The fourth and final wreath is presented on behalf of the local community first responders by Police Chief Vince Niski, City of Colorado Springs, and Fire Chief Randy Royal, City of Colorado Springs. At this time, the rifle squad from the 4th Infantry Division will fire a 3-volley salute, and as the last shots ring out, taps will be sounded by a bugler from the 4th Infantry Division. Pilots from the 140th Fighter Wing, Air National Guard from Buckley Space Force Base will then perform a missing man flyover as a tribute and show of respect for our fallen heroes. Please join us in a moment of silence following the missing man formation and the benediction. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. The El Paso County Sheriff's Office, Chaplain Bob Swales, will now deliver the benediction.
This has been a very solemn service. A benediction or closing prayer is designed to send the attendees on their way with a blessing from God. So let's pray, shall we? Gracious Heavenly Father, we have remembered before you today those whose lives were lost in this catastrophic event 20 years ago. We give thanks to you for the selfless courage of those brave souls who ran into burning buildings and who labored in the rubble. May their courage be to us a witness of what is possible when we are guided by love and dedication to our fellow citizens. We pray today for continued healing for all those suffering emotional and physical scars. May your Spirit breathe new breath into clouded lungs, new life into troubled minds, new warmth into broken hearts, so that all may feel wrapped in your loving embrace. May we move from suffering to hope, from brokenness to wholeness, from anxiety to courage, from death to life, from fear to love, and from despair to hope. And Father, may those who survived feel gratitude, not guilt. Assure each person whose life changed forever of your protection and strength. Dispel the nightmares. Silence the anxiety. and may we learn to depend on the security that only you can offer. Gracious God, our world changed with 9/11 attacks. We have seen how easily buildings can fall and how quickly lives can end. And as we remember that day, may it remind us that you are our only true security. Give us your strength to face the memory of this attack and the changes that it made in our lives. Give us your compassion to help each other and recognize the needs all around us. And give us your hope as we face an uncertain future. Now may God's strength sustain us. May his power preserve us. May his hands protect us. May his way direct us. And may his love go with us today and forever. Thank you, Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Slales. Once again, thank you for coming to today's ceremony. Your presence sends a message to all that we will remember September 11th, 2001. Yes, we will remember. Please remain standing for the departure of the official party. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the ceremony. At this time, we invite you to join us for refreshments provided by the Colorado 30 Group and encourage you to visit the static displays of first responders and military vehicles and capabilities. On behalf of General Van Herk, thank you for attending today's 9/11 commemoration, honoring the fallen and those protecting our homelands.